Now let's begin. Russell Wilson had learned early that money revealed character, rarely created it. Sitting in his home office on a Thursday evening in late October, reviewing the financial statements spread across his mahogany desk, he felt the weight of a decade's worth of revelations pressing against his chest. The numbers told a story his wife Marcy preferred to keep buried in casual conversation and cheerful deflections. Her parents' mortgage in Westchester, $3,400 monthly for the past 8 years since Gary Gregory's contracting business collapsed after the housing crisis. Her brother Todd's engineering degree at a private university, $47,000 annually, now in his 6th year because he kept changing majors. Her sister Lindsay's 3rd stint in a luxury rehabilitation facility in Connecticut, $28,000 for a 90-day program, not covered by insurance because she'd burned through her policy limits. Russell had built his structural engineering firm from the ground up, taking calculated risks on commercial projects that others deemed too complex. He developed a reputation for solving impossible problems, transforming abandoned factories into mixed-use developments, reinforcing historic buildings against modern safety codes without destroying their character. His particular genius lay in finding elegant solutions where others saw only obstacles. That same analytical mind now processed the crater in his finances with clinical precision. The door to his office opened without a knock. Marcy entered, her phone pressed to her ear, nodding along to whatever her mother was saying. She'd been beautiful when they met 12 years ago at a gallery opening in Manhattan, sharp cheekbones, auburn hair that caught the light, a laugh that made strangers want to join the conversation. That beauty remained, but something essential had calcified beneath it. Mom says the mortgage company is threatening foreclosure, Marcy said, covering the phone's microphone. She needs another $5,000 to catch up. Russell looked at his wife. Really looked. When had she stopped meeting his eyes when asking for money? When had these requests become statements, obligations rather than emergencies? I transferred the mortgage payment on the 1st, Russell said. The account should be current. Dad had some medical bills. He had to use that money for those. Gary Gregory's medical bills were a recurring fiction. The man was 62, healthy as a horse, and spent most afternoons at the country club his membership had somehow survived his business failure. Russell knew this because Ernest English, his corporate attorney and oldest friend, lived 3 doors down from the Gregory family home and provided periodic reconnaissance over whiskey at their favorite bar in Midtown. Marcy, we need to talk about. She held up a finger, turning away. Mom, I'll call you back. Russell's being difficult about money again. She ended the call and faced him. My family is struggling. We have money. I don't understand why you make this so hard every time. We have money. The phrasing struck him. Not, you've worked incredibly hard, or, I'm grateful for everything you do. The money was simply there, like oxygen, with no apparent source or limit. I'm not making anything hard. I'm asking what happened to the $3,400 I transferred 6 days ago. Does it matter? They need help. That's what family does. Russell stood, walking to the window that overlooked their backyard where his children, Jack, 10, and Abigail, 8, were playing with the neighbor's dog. Those kids deserved a father who taught them that love wasn't measured in wire transfers. They deserved to understand that helping family didn't mean enabling their worst impulses. How much has your family borrowed in total? Russell asked. Ballpark figure. I don't keep track of. I do. $340,000 over the past 10 years. That's not including the medical insurance I carry your parents on, or the car I leased for Todd, or the credit card I gave Lindsay that she maxed out 3 times before I canceled it. Marcy's face flushed. You're keeping score? That's what this is about. You resent helping people who love me. I'm asking if there's ever going to be a conversation about what they're doing with their lives. Todd's 28 years old, Marcy. He's been in college for a decade. Lindsay's been through rehab 4 times, and every time she gets out, your parents enable her by. Don't you dare judge my sister. You have no idea what addiction is like. Russell bit back his response. He knew plenty about addiction, to chaos, to being needed, to the intoxicating power of being the family savior. The Gregory family had made an art form of creating crises that required financial intervention. I'm not judging. I'm suggesting that maybe our approach isn't working. Maybe. Our approach. Marcy's voice went cold. You mean your money. That's what you mean. You think because you earn more, You get to decide what happens to my family. That's not. I'm done with this conversation. She grabbed her purse from the chair. I'm going to my parents' house. Don't wait up. The door slammed. Through the window, Russell watched Jack's head turn toward the sound, concern crossing his son's face. The boy was too perceptive, too attuned to the growing tension that filled the house like a toxic gas, invisible but suffocating. Russell returned to his desk, but the financial statements held no answers now. His phone buzzed. Ernest, can you talk? Something you should know about. Russell stepped outside, away from the house and curious ears. Your in-laws are having a party Saturday, Ernest said without preamble. Catered affair. I saw the setup going in this afternoon. Asked my neighbor what the occasion was. And they're celebrating Todd finally graduating. Invited half the neighborhood. Russell did the math. Todd's graduation was in December, 7 weeks away. They're having a party for something that hasn't happened yet. Apparently, the family tradition is to celebrate early. But here's the thing. The caterer is Premium Events. They don't do anything under $15,000. I'm looking at rental furniture, a full bar setup, string lights. This isn't a backyard barbecue. Russell closed his eyes. Premium Events. His mind automatically calculated. With the rental furniture, bartender, caterer, probably closer to $25,000. For people who couldn't make their mortgage payment. Thanks for the heads up, Russell said. Russell, I've known you since sophomore year of college. I've never heard you sound this tired. I'm fine. You're not. And speaking as your attorney, not just your friend, you need to protect yourself. Document everything. I don't like the pattern I'm seeing. That night, Russell couldn't sleep. He went to his office and did what he'd been avoiding for years. He opened a new spreadsheet and began documenting everything. Not just the large transfers, but the small ones. The emergency root canals that happened every 6 months. The insurance deductibles for accidents that never appeared on driving records. The business opportunities that always needed one more investment before they'd pay off. By 3 a.m., he had a comprehensive picture. By 4 a.m., he'd encrypted the file and backed it up in 3 separate locations. By 5 a.m., he was staring at a number that made his stomach turn. $412,000. Not $340,000. He'd been lowballing in his earlier argument, whether consciously or not. Marcy returned home at 6:15 a.m., just as Russell was making coffee. She looked exhausted but defiant. We need to talk, she said. I agree. They sat at the kitchen table, the morning light harsh and unforgiving through the windows. I've been thinking about us, Marcy began. About whether this is working anymore. Russell felt something shift inside him, like a foundation settling. Not cracking, settling. Finding its true level after years of supporting too much weight. Go on, he said. You've changed. You used to be generous, supportive. Now everything's about money, about what things cost. My family has been through a rough patch, but instead of helping them get back on their feet, you're constantly judging them. A 10-year rough patch. See? This is exactly what I mean. That tone, that attitude. She paused, and Russell recognized the expression on her face. She'd rehearsed this. Someone had coached her through this conversation. I think we should see a marriage counselor. Okay. The agreement seemed to surprise her. Okay. If you think it will help, I'm willing. They found a therapist, Dr. Patricia Hammond, who came highly recommended and charged $300 per hour. Russell paid the retainer. They attended 3 sessions before Thanksgiving. Dr. Hammond was good at her job. Too good. She asked questions that made Russell uncomfortable, made him examine his own role in the family dynamics. But she also asked questions that made Marcy squirm. Marcy, you've mentioned several times that your husband doesn't understand family loyalty, Dr. Hammond said during their 3rd session. Can you help me understand what family loyalty means to you? It means being there when people need you, not keeping score, not making them feel bad for needing help. And when Russell needs help, how does your family respond? The question hung in the air. Marcy opened her mouth, closed it. Tried again. Russell doesn't need help. He's successful. He's fine. Everyone needs help sometimes. Can you think of a time when Russell needed something from your family, and they provided it? The silence stretched. Russell watched his wife's face cycle through confusion, defensiveness, and finally something that might have been realization. It's not the same, Marcy finally said. My family has been through things. Real struggles. Russell had a privileged upbringing. Russell blinked. His father had been a high school math teacher. His mother had worked as a nurse. They'd lived in a 3-bedroom ranch in New Jersey, comfortable but hardly privileged. He'd paid for his own college through a combination of scholarships, loans, and working construction summers. But he said nothing. Dr. Hammond's eyes found his, and he saw recognition there. She'd identified the dynamic. The session ended with homework. Each of them was supposed to write down what they needed from the relationship and what they were willing to give. Russell never got to complete that assignment. 3 days later, Todd Gregory's graduation party happened as planned. Russell wasn't invited. Neither was Marcy, technically, but she went anyway, taking Jack and Abigail with her. They returned at 10 p.m. The kids ran upstairs, chattering about the party, the music, the food. Marcy stood in the foyer, her face flushed from wine and something else, triumph, maybe, or conviction. "We need to talk," she said. They were back at the kitchen table. Russell wondered if this table had witnessed more slow-motion disasters than any other piece of furniture in the house. "My family thinks I should leave you," Marcy said. There it was. The foundation didn't just settle this time. It cracked. Clean and sharp. "They think I can do better. That you're holding me back, holding them back. That I've wasted my best years on someone who doesn't understand what family means." Russell felt eerily calm. "What do you think?" "I think they might be right. I think maybe we got married too young. I think maybe I've been settling." Settling. The woman who hadn't worked in 8 years, whose every expense was covered, whose family's entire financial survival depended on his earning power. That woman thought she'd been settling. "I want a divorce," Marcy said. "And I want primary custody of the kids. You can have visitation, of course. We'll work that out. But they should stay in the house, in their school. With me." Russell studied his wife's face. He'd loved this woman. Probably still did, in some calcified chamber of his heart. But love wasn't enough when the other person saw you as an ATM with occasionally inconvenient opinions. "Okay," Russell said. "Okay." She'd expected a fight. Her whole posture had been braced for conflict. "If that's what you want, then okay. I'll give you everything you're asking for." Confusion crossed her face, followed by suspicion. Just like that. "Marcy, I'm not going to fight you for someone who doesn't want to be here. I'm not going to put our kids through an ugly custody battle. If you want to leave, leave." She stood, uncertain now, the script thrown off. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours." "Fine." She waited, perhaps for anger, for begging, for something. When nothing came, she turned and walked upstairs. Russell sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the house settle around him. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Ernest. "She wants a divorce. Can we meet tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "My office. 9 a.m. Don't sign anything yet." But Russell already knew he would sign everything. Not because he was defeated. Not because he was weak. Because he'd spent 10 years learning how the Gregory family operated, and he'd finally figured out the one move they'd never see coming. Ernest English's law office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan, all sharp angles and expensive minimalism. Russell arrived at 8:45 a.m., carrying a leather portfolio that held the last 10 years of his financial life. Ernest was waiting with coffee and the expression of a man preparing for war. "Before you say anything," Ernest began, "I want you to understand that you have options. You don't have to roll over just because." "I'm going to give her everything she asks for," Russell said. Ernest set down his coffee mug. "Russell, the house. Primary custody. Reasonable alimony. I'll be fair. I'll be generous, even. Are you having a breakdown? Because if you are, we should postpone this meeting and get you to someone who." "I'm not having a breakdown." Russell opened the portfolio and pulled out a thick folder. "I'm being strategic." For the next 2 hours, Russell walked Ernest through everything he'd documented. The financial statements. The pattern of emergencies. The money that disappeared into the Gregory family black hole. But that was just the foundation. The real structure of his plan was more elegant. "I need you to handle the divorce," Russell said. "But I need you to do it a specific way. I'm going to agree to everything Marcy asks for with minimal negotiation. I want this done fast. I want it done clean. And I want the settlement to include specific provisions." Ernest listened, his expression shifting from concern to surprise to something that might have been admiration. "That's diabolical," Ernest said finally. "That's structural engineering. Every building has a load-bearing wall. Remove it, and the whole thing comes down. The Gregory family's load-bearing wall is me. I'm going to remove myself and watch what happens." And the kids? Russell's expression hardened. Jack and Abigail are smart. They're watching everything. Right now, they don't understand what's happening, but they will. And when they do, I'll be there. Not because I fought their mother in court. Not because I poisoned them against her family. But because I was the one who showed up. Marcy's lawyer was a shark named Barbara Chun who had a reputation for eviscerating husbands in divorce court. Russell had expected this. He'd recommended her himself, through a careful suggestion to Marcy's mother Sharon, who'd passed it along as her own idea. The first meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Russell arrived with Ernest, prepared for battle. Barbara Chun laid out Marcy's demands like she was ordering from a menu. The house, 4,200 square feet in an exclusive neighborhood, worth $1.8 million. Primary custody of both children. Child support, for $1,500 per month. Alimony, $6,000 per month for 6 years. Half of Russell's retirement accounts. Half of his business valuation. Ernest made a show of reviewing the demands, frowning, making notes. Russell let him perform. Then he leaned forward. "We'll agree to all of it," Russell said. Barbara Chin's pen stopped moving. "Excuse me. The house, the custody arrangement, the support payments, all acceptable. I have 3 conditions for my agreement." Barbara exchanged a glance with Marcy, who sat beside her looking simultaneously relieved and confused. "First, I want clearly defined visitation. Every other weekend, alternating holidays, for weeks in the summer. In writing, specific dates." "That's standard," Barbara said cautiously. "Second, the child support and alimony payments continue only as long as Marcy doesn't remarry and maintains the children in the marital home. If she sells the house or remarries, those payments cease immediately, though I'll continue contributing to the children's direct expenses, education, healthcare, extracurriculars." Barbara frowned. "The house provision is unusual. The house is for the children's stability. That's the purpose," Marcy stated. "If she sells it, that purpose is void. As for remarriage, I shouldn't be expected to support another man's household." It was reasonable enough that Barbara couldn't object without looking foolish. "And third," Barbara asked, "I want all outstanding loans and financial support to the Gregory family to be explicitly excluded from the settlement. None of those debts or obligations transfer to Marcy. They remain mine, and they end when I choose to end them." Marcy leaned toward Barbara, whispering urgently. Russell couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. She was asking if this meant he'd continue supporting her family. "That's acceptable," Barbara said after consulting with Marcy. "My client agrees to all terms." They signed the preliminary agreement that afternoon. Ernest said nothing until they were back in his office. "You just agreed to give away close to $3 million when you factor in everything." "I did. And you seem happy about it." "I'm not happy, but I'm free. As of right now, every penny that goes to the Gregory family is my choice. And I'm choosing to stop." Ernest poured them both whiskey. "What's the timeline you're seeing?" 6 months. Maybe less. Gary Gregory's contracting business has been dead for years, but he keeps up appearances by taking loans against the house. Sharon doesn't work and hasn't in 20 years. Todd has an engineering degree but no actual job prospects because he spent college partying instead of networking. Lindsay's addiction is expensive, and she's alienated every friend who might help. The only reason they've survived this long is because I've been the backup plan. And when you're not, the load-bearing wall comes out. The structure collapses. Russell sipped his whiskey. "I'm not going to actively sabotage them. I'm just going to let them experience the natural consequences of their choices for the first time in a decade. Your kids are going to be in the blast radius. My kids are going to learn an important lesson about consequences. And they're going to learn it while knowing that their father's door is always open." The divorce moved with surprising speed. By mid-December, the papers were signed. Russell moved out of the house the day after Christmas, leaving the furniture, the artwork, everything except his clothes and personal items. Jack and Abigail watched from the driveway as he loaded boxes into his truck. "Dad, why can't you stay?" Abigail asked, her 8-year-old face crumpling. Russell knelt down, eye level with his daughter. "Because sometimes grown-ups can't live together anymore. But that doesn't change how much I love you. Nothing changes that. Mom said you didn't want to be a family anymore," Jack said. At 10, he was old enough to hear the adult conversations happening around him, young enough to not fully understand them. "Your mom and I are getting divorced," Russell said carefully. That means we won't be married anymore. But you're still my son, and Abigail's still my daughter, and nothing will ever change that. I'll see you next weekend, okay? He hugged them both, feeling like he was tearing something essential out of himself. Then he got in his truck and drove to his new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. It wasn't the house in Westchester. It wasn't close to the kids' school, but it was his. The first night in the apartment, Russell ordered Chinese food and sat on the floor of his empty living room, eating straight from the containers. His phone buzzed constantly, his mother calling, concerned. His younger sister wanting details. Friends who'd heard the news and didn't know what to say. He ignored them all except one message from Ernest. "How are you holding up?" Russell typed back, "I'm good." Now we wait. He didn't have to wait long. The Gregory family's traditional New Year's Eve party was the social event of their neighborhood calendar. A chance for Gary and Sharon to remind everyone they still mattered, still had status. Russell had attended for 9 years, watching the display grow more elaborate even as the family's actual financial situation deteriorated. He wasn't invited to the 10th. Instead, he spent New Year's Eve in his apartment, assembling IKEA furniture and listening to the city's distant celebration. At midnight, his phone rang. Jack, calling from his mother's phone. "Happy New Year, Dad." "Happy New Year, buddy. You still up?" "Mom let us stay up. Grandpa's party is really big this year." "That's nice. There's an ice sculpture. It looks like a dragon." An ice sculpture. Russell did the mental math. For the kind of elaborate ice sculpture Jack was describing, probably $2,500. Plus the caterer, the bar, the decorations. The Gregory family was celebrating their daughter's divorce the way other families celebrated weddings. "Sounds impressive," Russell said. "When are you picking us up this weekend?" "Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. We'll go get breakfast, then maybe the Science Museum?" "Cool. Love you, Dad." "Love you too, Jack." After he hung up, Russell stood at his apartment window, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. He felt nothing, not sadness, not anger, not satisfaction. Just a peculiar emptiness, like a room after furniture has been removed and you can finally see the wall's true shape. January passed in a new routine. Russell threw himself into work, taking on 3 major projects that he'd previously declined because of time constraints. Without the constant drain of family drama, he found his focus sharpening. His firm secured a contract to renovate a historic courthouse in Philadelphia, $4.2 million in revenue, the kind of prestige project that would elevate his reputation. He saw his children every other weekend, taking them to museums, restaurants, the occasional Broadway show. At first, they were hesitant, clearly coached by Marcy about appropriate topics of conversation. "Don't mention money. Don't tell Dad about Grandpa. Don't make him feel bad." But children are terrible liars, and Russell was a patient excavator of truth. "How's Mom doing?" he'd ask casually over pancakes. "She's okay. She's been on the phone a lot. Grandma comes over every day. That's nice that they're close. Grandma seems sad. She and Mom were talking about selling something." Russell filed this away. By late January, he'd reconstructed enough of the Gregory family's financial situation through these casual conversations and Ernest's continued reconnaissance to understand the timeline. Gary Gregory had taken out a home equity line of credit, $150,000, to fund his lifestyle over the past 3 years. That line of credit had an adjustable rate tied to the prime rate, which had been climbing. The monthly payment had likely doubled. Sharon's credit cards, previously paid off by Russell's periodic loans, were maxed out. Todd, now graduated, had moved back home because his entry-level engineering job paid $52,000 annually, not nearly enough to support the lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to. Lindsay was out of rehab again, living with her parents, not working. The structure was already showing cracks. February brought the first call, not from Marcy, but from Sharon Gregory. Russell saw the name on his phone and let it go to voicemail. "Russell, it's Sharon. I know things have been difficult, but I was hoping we could talk. Family to family. Please call me back." He deleted the message. 3 days later, Gary called. "Son, we need to discuss something important. I have a business opportunity that requires." Russell hung up before Gary finished the sentence. A week after that, Todd texted, "Hey man, no hard feelings about the divorce, right? Was wondering if you could help me out with a small loan. Job pays shit." Russell blocked the number. Through Jack and Abigail, Russell monitored the situation like a seismologist watching tremors before an earthquake. Grandma and Grandpa were arguing more. Grandma was crying a lot. Uncle Todd was angry about having to share a room with Aunt Lindsay. Mom was stressed. "Is everything okay?" Russell would ask. "I think so," Jack would say, with the uncertainty of a child who sensed something wrong but couldn't articulate it. Valentine's Day weekend was Russell's turn with the kids. He picked them up Saturday morning from the house he'd paid for, where his ex-wife now lived with her parents, her brother, and her sister, all of them crammed into 4,200 square feet like survivors in a bunker. Marcy looked exhausted when she answered the door. The house behind her was messier than Russell had ever seen it. Through the doorway, he glimpsed moving boxes stacked in the hallway. "Going somewhere?" Russell asked. "My parents are consolidating. Downsizing. They're selling the house." "Not yet. They're just getting rid of some things." Russell understood. They were preparing to sell the house, which meant they were desperate. He spent that weekend with Jack and Abigail doing ordinary things. Ice skating in Central Park, hot chocolate, a movie. But Sunday evening, as he was driving them home, Jack asked the question Russell had been waiting for. "Dad, why doesn't Mom work?" "What do you mean?" "All my friends' moms work. Even Tommy's mom, and she has a baby. But Mom stays home, and we're older. Why doesn't she get a job?" "That's a good question. Maybe you should ask her." "I did. She said she doesn't need to work because of the divorce money." Russell's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "The money from the divorce is to help take care of you and your sister. It's not supposed to be instead of your mom working." "Oh," Jack processed this. "But Grandpa doesn't work either. And Uncle Todd's job doesn't pay enough. And Aunt Lindsay can't work because of her problems. So if Mom doesn't work, who pays for everything?" "That's another good question." Jack was quiet for a long moment. "You used to pay for everything, didn't you?" Russell pulled up to a red light and looked at his son. "I helped when I could. And now you don't. Now I'm not married to your mom anymore. So things are different. Are they going to be okay?" It was the question Russell had been dreading. The truthful answer was no, probably not, because the Gregory family had built their entire existence on a foundation that no longer existed. But Jack was 10. Abigail was 8. They didn't need brutal honesty. "I think they're going to have to figure some things out," Russell said carefully. "But that's not your responsibility to fix. Or mine." When they pulled up to the house, both children hesitated before getting out. Abigail hugged Russell extra tight. "I like it better at your apartment," she whispered. "It's quieter." That night, after the kids were inside, Russell sat in his truck for a long moment, watching the house. Lights were on in every room. Through the windows, he could see silhouettes moving. A family meeting, probably. Another crisis requiring collective hand-wringing. His phone buzzed. Ernest. Gary Gregory just listed the Westchester house. Saw it on the MLS. $1.9 million asking. Russell texted back, "Good." The real estate market in early 2024 was tepid. Gary's house, with its outdated kitchen and bathrooms that hadn't been renovated since the 90s, sat on the market for 3 weeks without a single offer. He dropped the price to $1.8 million, then $1.75 million. The problem was the home equity line of credit. Gary owed $150,000 on it, plus the remaining $240,000 on the original mortgage. After realtor fees and closing costs, he'd clear maybe $1.3 million if he could sell at $1.75 million. It was a lot of money, but not enough to buy a new house, not in Westchester, not with their credit damaged by missed payments and maxed-out cards. March arrived with spring rain and the Gregory family's slow-motion collapse. Russell heard about it piecemeal, through the kids, through Ernest, through the strange osmosis of news and interconnected circles. Lindsay relapsed. Another $28,000 rehab stay, this time not covered by anyone. Sharon Gregory apparently sobbed for 2 days straight before checking Lindsay into a state-funded facility instead. Todd quit his engineering job after 3 months because his boss didn't respect him. He was now applying to graduate schools, apparently believing that more education was the solution to his employment problem. Marcy stopped taking the kids to their activities, piano lessons, soccer practice, art class, because she couldn't afford the fees. When Jack mentioned this, Russell quietly contacted the providers and paid the fees directly, arranging transportation through a service. "I don't think Mom knows you're doing this," Jack said one Saturday. "Probably not," Russell agreed. "But you and Abigail shouldn't miss out on things you enjoy because of adult problems." By mid-March, Marcy called Russell directly for the first time since the divorce. He was at a construction site in Philadelphia, reviewing foundation work, when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Russell." Her voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk about the children's expenses." "What about them?" "You're paying for their activities directly. That's not how this is supposed to work. The child support is supposed to cover. The child support is supposed to help provide for their basic needs. Piano lessons and soccer aren't basic needs. But I think they're important, so I'm covering them. You're undermining me. I'm supporting my children." A long silence. Then, "My family is going through a difficult time. I'm sorry to hear that." "That's it. You're sorry. What else would you like me to say, Marcy? You could help." There it was. The request Russell had been waiting for since he walked out on Christmas Day. He took a breath, watching his construction crew work on the foundation, thinking about load-bearing walls and structural integrity. "No," he said. No, I can't help. I'm not your husband anymore. I'm not your family's safety net. I'm your children's father, and I'll support them. But your family's financial problems aren't mine to solve. You're really going to do this? You're going to watch my family lose everything. I watched your family celebrate my divorce. I watched them throw a party because you left me. I signed the papers because you asked me to. I gave you everything you wanted. What exactly did you expect would happen next?" The silence on the other end was absolute. "Marcy, I supported your family for 10 years. Your father's mortgage. Your brother's education. Your sister's rehab. I never complained, never kept score, at least not out loud. But at some point, helping someone becomes enabling them. Your family never learned to stand on their own because they never had to. That's not my fault, and it's not my responsibility to fix. The kids are fine. The kids will continue to be fine because I'm their father and I love them. But you made a choice. Your family made a choice. And choices have consequences." He hung up before she could respond. That night, Russell couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the conversation, wondering if he was being cruel, if he was using his children as pawns, if his careful plan was actually just revenge dressed up in rational language. At 2 a.m., he called Ernest. "Do you think I'm being an asshole?" Russell asked when Ernest answered, groggy but alert. "Do you want the lawyer answer or the friend answer?" "Friend. I think you're being human. I think you got used for a decade, and when you stopped being useful, they threw you away. I think you're watching the natural consequences of their choices play out, and you're feeling guilty because you were trained to fix their problems. But Russell, you're not the asshole here. You never were. Then why do I feel like shit? Because you're a good person. Good people feel guilty even when they shouldn't. That's how they got away with using you for so long." Russell sat with that truth for a long time after hanging up. April brought the auction notice. Gary Gregory's house was being foreclosed. Russell learned about it when Jack mentioned that they might be moving soon. "Where?" Russell asked. "I don't know. Grandpa's really angry. He keeps saying something about the bank being criminals." The bank wasn't criminal. The bank was doing exactly what banks do when borrowers default on home equity lines of credit and mortgage payments. The natural order of contracts and consequences. Russell could have stopped it. He could have written a check for $400,000, cleared Gary's debts, let the family stay in their house. He could have been the hero again. Instead, he sat in his Brooklyn apartment and did nothing. The silence, he was learning, was its own kind of power. By early May, Marcy called again. This time, Russell could hear the desperation she'd been trying to hide before. "Russell, please. We're going to lose the house. My parents have nowhere to go. Todd can't afford to rent anywhere on his salary, and Lindsay just got out of rehab. She needs stability. The kids need stability. The kids can come live with me," Russell said. "I'll convert my office into a second bedroom. They can transfer to schools here. Problem solved. You know I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because they're my children. They're our children. And if you're in a crisis, maybe they'd be better off with the parent who has stable housing and income." "You son of a," she caught herself. "Please, I'm begging you. Just help us one more time." "And then what? A year from now, there's another crisis? 2 years from now? At what point does your family take responsibility for their own lives?" "We're family. Family helps each other. I was your family, Marcy. Your family convinced you to leave me. They threw a party about it. You can't have it both ways." The call ended with Marcy crying, which made Russell feel like the villain in a story where he was supposed to be learning a lesson about forgiveness and generosity. But he'd learned his lesson years ago. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face their consequences. In mid-May, Ernest called with news. Gary Gregory just declared bankruptcy. Chapter 7. He's liquidating everything. The house. Gone. The cars. Everything. Sharon's jewelry, some antique furniture they inherited, all being sold to pay creditors. Where are they going? I heard they're moving into an apartment. Someplace in New Rochelle. 2 bedrooms. The whole family. Russell tried to imagine it. Gary, Sharon, Marcy, Todd, Lindsay, Jack, and Abigail, all crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment. The Gregory family, who'd spent a decade living beyond their means on someone else's dime, learning what life at their actual income level looked like. What about Marcy? Russell asked. She violated the settlement terms by selling the house. Technically, she didn't sell it. The bank foreclosed. That's a gray area. But yes, under the terms of your divorce agreement, you could argue that the child support and alimony payments should cease since the house is no longer the children's primary residence. I'm not going to do that. Ernest was quiet for a moment. You're a better man than they deserve. I'm not being generous. I'm being strategic. If I cut off the money now, I'm the bad guy in my kids' eyes. But if I keep paying while Marcy struggles to make ends work in a cramped apartment, they're going to start asking questions. They're going to start understanding. 2 weeks later was Russell's weekend with the kids. He picked them up from the new apartment in New Rochelle, a sad little building with peeling paint and a broken elevator. Jack and Abigail looked exhausted. How's the new place? Russell asked as they drove away. It's okay, Abigail said automatically. It sucks, Jack said. I have to sleep on a pull-out couch in the living room. Abigail shares a room with Mom. Uncle Todd and Aunt Lindsay share the other bedroom, and they fight all the time. Grandma and Grandpa sleep on an air mattress in the living room. Everybody's mad all the time. I'm sorry, buddy. Why can't we live with you? The question hung in the air. Russell glanced in the rearview mirror at his son's face. 10 years old and already tired of adult problems. Do you want to? Russell asked carefully. Yeah. Your apartment is quiet. And you don't yell. Does Mom yell? She cries more than yells. Grandpa yells. A lot. Abigail nodded agreement. Listen, both of you. If you ever want to talk to me about living arrangements, we can. But that's a conversation that would involve lawyers and judges and a lot of adult stuff. It's not something to rush into just because things are hard right now. But privately, Russell knew it was coming. The Gregory family structure was collapsing faster than he'd anticipated. The foundation wasn't just cracking, it was crumbling. And his children were watching it happen in real time. That weekend, he kept them busy with activities, hiking in the Catskills, dinner at their favorite pizza place, a lazy Sunday morning at the apartment where they played board games and Jack taught Abigail chess. Normal. Stable. Quiet. Sunday evening, when Russell drove them back to New Rochelle, Marcy was waiting outside the apartment building. She looked like she'd aged 5 years and 5 months. Can we talk? She asked. Alone. Russell sent the kids upstairs and stood with his ex-wife on the cracked sidewalk. I've been thinking, Marcy began, about what you said, about enabling my family. Okay. You were right. I didn't want to see it, but you were right. My parents have been using us, for years. Todd's never going to get his life together because he doesn't have to. Lindsay's never going to recover because someone always rescues her. And I've been so focused on defending them that I lost my marriage and... She broke down, really broke down, and Russell felt a twinge of the old instinct to comfort her. But he stayed where he was. I'm sorry, Marcy said finally. I'm so sorry for how my family treated you. For how I treated you. You gave us everything, and we acted like it was owed to us. Thank you for saying that. Is there any way? She stopped herself. Never mind. I know the answer. What were you going to ask? If there was any way we could try again. But I know that's not fair to you. And honestly, I don't even know if that's what I want or if I'm just desperate. Russell looked at the woman he'd been married to for 10 years. He still saw traces of the person he'd fallen in love with, but those traces were buried under years of bad choices and entitled thinking. I think you need to figure out who you are without your family defining you, Russell said gently. And I think our kids need to see both of us modeling healthy boundaries and self-respect. Maybe in another life, we could have made it work, but not in this one. Marcy nodded, tears streaming down her face. For what it's worth, you deserved better. So did you. You just didn't know it. As Russell drove away, he felt something release in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but a loosening of the knot of anger and resentment he'd been carrying. The next week, Marcy's lawyer contacted Ernest with a proposal. Marcy wanted to modify the custody arrangement. She thought the children should spend more time with Russell, maybe a 60-40 split instead of the every other weekend arrangement they had now. She's drowning, Ernest said. 2 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 adults who can't get their shit together. She knows you're the better option. Set up a meeting, Russell said. But I want Jack and Abigail to have a say in this. They're old enough to have opinions about where they live. The meeting happened in late May. Marcy, Russell, both lawyers, and a family court mediator. After 2 hours of discussion, they reached a new arrangement. Jack and Abigail would spend weekdays with Russell during the school year, weekends with Marcy. Summers would be split evenly. This is in the children's best interest, the mediator said as they signed the modification. They need stability, and Mr. Wilson's home provides that. Walking out of the courthouse, Ernest clapped Russell on the shoulder. You won. Nobody won, Russell said. The kids lost their family home. Marcy's living in a cramped apartment. Her family's destroyed. There's no winning here. But you're free. And you have your kids. Yeah, Russell said. I have my kids. By June, Russell had converted his home office into a proper bedroom for Jack. Abigail got the other bedroom, which he decorated with her help. Pale purple walls, a bookshelf she'd picked out, fairy lights strung across the ceiling. His daughter had cried when she saw it. Not sad tears, but overwhelmed ones. This is really mine, she'd asked. Really yours. The new custody arrangement started on a Monday. Russell made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, while Jack and Abigail got ready for school. Normal. Domestic. The kind of morning he'd imagined a decade ago when they'd first talked about having kids. Dad, Jack said over breakfast. Why didn't you fight for us before? Russell considered the question carefully. I didn't want to put you through a court battle where lawyers and judges asked you questions about your parents. And I thought your mom and I would figure things out on our own. But we could have been living with you this whole time. Maybe. Or maybe your mom needed to realize some things first. Sometimes people have to lose something before they understand its value. Jack absorbed this with the seriousness of a kid who'd grown up too fast. Grandpa's really angry at you. I imagine he is. He says you abandoned the family. That you're being cruel. What do you think? Jack met his father's eyes. I think Grandpa's been taking advantage of you for a long time. And I think he's mad because now he has to take care of himself. Russell felt a complicated mix of pride and sadness. His 10-year-old son had figured out in months what Russell had taken years to see. That's very perceptive, Jack. I'm just not stupid. Life settled into its new rhythm. Russell hired a part-time nanny to help with the logistics of 2 kids. A practical woman named Frances Robertson who'd raised 3 of her own children and had infinite patience for preteen drama. The kids adapted to Brooklyn, made new friends, thrived in the quieter environment. Marcy visited on weekends, taking them to museums and movies, trying to rebuild her relationship with them outside the chaos of the Gregory family apartment. Russell saw her growing stronger, more independent, without her parents' constant interference. In July, Sharon Gregory called Russell again. He answered this time, curious. I wanted to apologize, Sharon said. For everything. For encouraging Marcy to leave you. For taking advantage of your generosity. For the party. Thank you for saying that. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I needed you to hear it. We destroyed something good because we were selfish and stupid, and now we're all paying for it. What are you going to do? Gary's got a job. Finally. At Home Depot. It's humiliating for him. But it's work. Todd's considering a job offer in Denver, good salary, good opportunity. He needs to get away from us, I think. And Lindsay's trying. She's been clean for 3 months now. That's good. I'm glad things are stabilizing. We don't deserve your kindness. Probably not. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because my kids love their grandparents, even when their grandparents make terrible decisions. After he hung up, Russell stood at his apartment window, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. The city stretched before him, full of possibility and second chances. His phone buzzed. Marcy, thank you for being reasonable about the custody change. The kids seem happy. He typed back, they are. So am I. There was a long pause. Then, maybe we can all grab dinner sometime? The 4 of us. I think it would be good for Jack and Abigail to see us getting along. Sure. Let me know when. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something better, acceptance. They'd all made choices, paid prices, learned lessons. The Gregory family would rebuild, or they wouldn't. Marcy would figure out her life, or she wouldn't. But Jack and Abigail would be okay. They had a father who showed up, who set boundaries, who taught them that love wasn't measured in wire transfers, but in consistency and presence. August brought the call Russell had been half-heartedly expecting since December. Marcy, crying. "Russell, we need help. My dad lost his job. The landlord's threatening to evict us. Mom's medical bills from a fall she had last month. Todd left for Denver and can't contribute anymore. Lindsay relapsed again. Everything's falling apart. Please, I'm begging you." Russell listened to his ex-wife sob on the other end of the line, heard the desperation that came from finally hitting rock bottom. He thought about the 10 years he'd spent keeping this family afloat. The mortgage payments, the tuition, the rehab bills, the emergencies that always required immediate cash, the party they'd thrown to celebrate his divorce. He thought about the lesson he wanted his children to learn about consequences and responsibility. He thought about the 5 words he'd been preparing to say for 8 months. "I'm not your husband anymore," Russell said calmly. "That's not my problem." Then he hung up and went to check on his children, who were playing chess in the living room, safe and stable in the home he'd built for them. The home that didn't depend on enabling other people's dysfunction. The home that stood on its own foundation. Marcy called back 6 times. Russell didn't answer. She texted, "How can you be so heartless?" He didn't respond. Ernest called an hour later. "Marcy's lawyer just contacted me. She's threatening to petition for increased child support based on your income. She claims the kids need more money." "The kids live with me," Russell said. "How would increasing payments to her help them?" "It wouldn't. She's desperate and grasping at straws. Let her petition. We'll go back to court. A judge will see that the children's primary residence is with me, that they're well cared for, that Marcy's financial problems have nothing to do with the kids' needs. This could get ugly. It's already ugly, Ernest. But I'm done rescuing the Gregory family from themselves." That night, Jack found Russell on the apartment's small balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Mom called me," Jack said. "She was crying. She said you refused to help them." "That's true. Are you really not going to help?" Russell looked at his son. "Jack, I'm going to ask you a serious question, and I want an honest answer. Do you think I should give Mom's family money?" Jack was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. They're family." "That's true. But family isn't supposed to take advantage of each other. For 10 years, I helped your grandparents, your uncle, your aunt. I paid their bills, their debts, their emergencies. And when your mom divorced me, they celebrated. They threw a party. They told your mom she could do better than me. I know. Mom told me about the party. She said it was wrong. It was wrong. And now they're in trouble, and they want me to rescue them again. But if I do, what lesson does that teach them? What lesson does it teach you?" Jack thought about this. That they can do whatever they want, and you'll always bail them out. Exactly. Sometimes, the best way to help someone is to let them face their own consequences. It's hard. It feels mean. But it's the only way they learn. What if they don't learn? What if they just fail? Then they fail. And they'll have to rebuild. But they'll rebuild their own lives, not lives built on someone else's money. Jack nodded slowly. "Okay, I get it. You're not mad at me. I'm a little mad. But I also get it." Russell hugged his son, grateful beyond words for this kid's emotional intelligence, his ability to understand complex situations even at 10 years old. September brought the school year. Jack and Abigail started at their new school in Brooklyn, an excellent public school with strong programs in science and arts. Russell met with their teachers, joined the PTA, showed up at every soccer game and piano recital. Marcy's attempts to modify child support failed. The judge looked at the custody arrangement, saw that the children's primary residence was with Russell, and dismissed the petition. She also ordered Marcy to attend financial counseling and parenting classes, noting that the instability in Marcy's living situation was concerning. In October, Russell received a letter from Gary Gregory. Not an email, not a text, an actual handwritten letter like people sent in the 1800s. "Russell, I'm writing because I don't have your email and you've blocked my phone number. I deserve that. I deserve worse than that. You were right about everything. About me using you. About Todd needing to stand on his own. About us celebrating your divorce like it was something to be proud of. We were terrible to you, and I'm ashamed. I'm not writing to ask for money. I know that ship has sailed. I'm writing to tell you that I'm sorry. and to tell you that Sharon and I understand why you're doing what you're doing. We don't like it, but we understand it. Todd's doing well in Denver. Lindsay's in a state program now. She'll be there for a year at least. Marcy's figuring things out. Sharon and I are surviving. Barely, but we're surviving. I got a job at Home Depot. It's humiliating. I'm 62 years old, working retail, taking orders from kids half my age. But it's honest work. And maybe that's what I needed, to understand what honest work feels like after years of living on borrowed money. Jack and Abigail are good kids. You raised them right. Take care of them. Gary. Russell read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. He didn't respond. The letter wasn't asking for a response. It was just an acknowledgement, a closing of a chapter. By Thanksgiving, life had found its equilibrium. Russell hosted the holiday at his apartment. Jack, Abigail, his own parents who'd flown in from New Jersey, his sister, and her family. 20 people crammed into his 2-bedroom apartment, eating turkey and watching football, loud and chaotic and perfect. Marcy picked up the kids Friday morning, taking them for the weekend. She looked healthier than she had in months, thinner, but in a toned way, not a stressed way. She'd gotten a job as an administrative assistant at a law firm. Entry level, nothing glamorous, but it was income. The apartment's less crowded now, she told Russell. Todd left, Lindsay's in the program. It's just me and my parents. We're managing. I'm glad. I'm sorry, she said. For calling you heartless. For threatening to go back to court. For everything. You were desperate. People do desperate things. Still, I'm sorry. After she left with the kids, Ernest came over with beer and leftover pie. How does it feel? Ernest asked. Watching them struggle? Honestly, it doesn't feel like anything. It just is. They're adults making adult choices and facing adult consequences. I'm not responsible for fixing their lives. But nothing. No buts. I spent 10 years believing I was responsible for everyone's happiness, everyone's financial security. I'm done with that. My only responsibility is to my kids, to my business, and to myself. You've changed. I've learned. There's a difference. December arrived with the 1-year anniversary of Russell's divorce. He marked it by taking Jack and Abigail to see the Nutcracker at Lincoln Center, a tradition he'd established in their new life. Afterward, over hot chocolate at a cafe near the theater, Abigail asked a question that took Russell by surprise. Dad, are you happy? What do you mean? Like, are you happy now? Happier than before. Russell considered this carefully. I'm more myself than I was before. Does that make sense? Kind of. Before, I spent a lot of energy trying to make other people happy, even when they didn't appreciate it. Now I spend my energy on things and people that matter. On you and Jack. On my work. On being the person I want to be. So yeah, I guess I'm happier. Are you happy? Both kids nodded. We like living with you, Jack said. It's quieter. More normal. We still love Mom. Abigail added quickly, as if Russell might be offended. I know you do. And you should. She's your mom. But it's okay to be happy where you are, even if things are complicated. On December 28th, exactly 1 year after moving into his Brooklyn apartment, Russell sat at his desk reviewing his firm's year-end finances. It had been an extraordinary year. 3 major projects completed, 2 more in progress, revenue up 40% from the previous year. Without the constant drain of supporting the Gregory family, he'd been able to invest in his business, hire 2 new engineers, bid on projects he'd previously considered too risky. His phone rang. An unknown number. Russell almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Russell Wilson. Mr. Wilson, this is Patricia Hammond. I was your marriage counselor last year. Dr. Hammond. I remember. I hope I'm not overstepping, but I wanted to follow up. I heard through mutual connections that you and Marcy divorced, and that there were custody modifications. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I've been thinking about your case quite a bit. You were in a very difficult situation, enabling dynamics, financial enmeshment with your in-laws. What you did took tremendous courage. What I did, walking away, setting boundaries, letting people face their own consequences. A lot of people in your position would have kept trying to fix everything, kept sacrificing themselves. You chose differently. Russell was quiet for a moment. I'm not sure it was courage. It might have just been self-preservation. Sometimes those are the same thing. Anyway, I wanted you to know that you made the right choice. For yourself and for your children. They needed to see a parent who valued himself, who set healthy boundaries. That's a powerful lesson. After he hung up, Russell stood at his window, looking out at the city he'd come to love. Brooklyn in winter, lights glowing against the dark sky, millions of people living their complicated lives, making their choices, facing their consequences. His door opened. Jack and Abigail, home from Marcy's weekend visit. Dad, Abigail ran to him. Mom got a promotion. She's going to be a paralegal now. That's wonderful. And Grandma got a part-time job at a library. Grandpa's still at Home Depot, but he says it's not so bad anymore. I'm glad they're doing better. Jack hung back, watching Russell with those two wise eyes. They asked about you. Grandma especially. She wanted to know if you were happy. What did you tell her? That you are. That we are. That this is better. Russell pulled both his children into a hug, feeling the weight of the past years settle into something like peace. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just the quiet satisfaction of a structure that had found its true foundation, stable and strong, built on honesty instead of enabling, on boundaries instead of resentment. That night, after the kids were asleep, Russell opened his laptop and composed an email to Marcy. Not about money. Not about custody. Just an observation. Marcy, the kids told me about your promotion. Congratulations. I'm proud of you for building a career and finding your independence. I know this year has been hard on your family. I know you probably think I was cruel for not helping. Maybe I was. But I also think you're stronger now than you were when we were married. All of you are. Sometimes people need to fall before they learn how to stand. I don't hate you. I don't hate your family. I just couldn't keep being the foundation you all stood on. I needed to build my own life, and you all needed to build yours. I hope you have a good new year. Russell. He sent the email and closed his laptop. His phone immediately buzzed with a response. Thank you. For everything. For the years of support. For walking away when you did. For being the father our kids needed even when I couldn't be the mother they deserved. I'm learning. Slowly. But I'm learning. Maybe in another life, we could have done this right. But in this life, I think we're both exactly where we need to be. Happy New Year, Russell. Russell set down his phone and walked to his children's rooms. Jack was sprawled across his bed, mouth open, peaceful. Abigail had fallen asleep reading, her lamp still on. A book about space exploration spread across her chest. He turned off her lamp, adjusted Jack's blanket, and stood in the doorway between their rooms, watching them sleep. This was his victory. Not the satisfaction of watching the Gregory family struggle. Not the vindication of being proven right. But this, two children, safe and loved, learning through his example that self-respect mattered, that boundaries were healthy, that you could love people without enabling their dysfunction. The structure he'd built, this new life, this careful architecture of dignity and boundaries, would stand. It would stand because it wasn't built on anyone else's foundation. It stood on its own. Russell closed their doors and returned to the living room, where he opened a bottle of wine and raised a silent toast to the man he'd been a year ago, exhausted, used, unvalued. And to the man he'd become, free, present, whole. The clock struck midnight somewhere in the city, a new year beginning. Russell sat in the quiet of his apartment and allowed himself, finally, to feel what he'd been afraid to feel for 12 months. Not happiness exactly. Not triumph. Just peace. And that, he decided, was victory enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.